Okay, guys, thanks for coming out today. Welcome to Friday Live. That's Clay's online virtual meetup group. We do this once a month, the last Friday, typically of every month. Really excited to have a great guest today, and a good friend, Doug Gardner. And he's going to be talking about getting better, which is something that's kind of it's some gears that are constantly spinning and grinding mostly in my head, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit later on. So he'll be our main speaker today. Before we get started, I just want to mention some things that are coming up, some conferences that are in the throughout the world. Next week we have full access. This is supposed to be a really good. I haven't been to this one, but it's a continuation of um Pause on Air. It's a continuation of Pause on Air, or at least kind of replaces that, with a slightly different structure. And it's in California next week. Is anybody going to that by any chance? Jose, you're not going to go? It's like right next door to you. All right. So it's supposed to be quite good. I noticed one of our users from Singapore is going to be actually attending. So it's starting to get some significant traction this year. Engage U is going to be in Malmo, Sweden. That Engage U alternates between Sweden and Antwerp, Belgium, every other year. And this is a pretty nice venue. I think they're having it at the same place, and it's an all-in-one type place. Expecting about 250 or so developers. So it is officially now the biggest FileMaker conference, because there's no Claris one, right? So it's a pretty good conference there. There's some good entertainment in the sense of activities and such. And then finally coming up in November, they're running it again, is Milan FileMaker Week, and they're doing all Milan related things. We'll probably be putting in a talk for Engage U and possibly Milan. We haven't really fully pulled the trigger on that yet, but if we are and we go, we'll hope to see you all there. I'm just going to mention some quick things, and let me just pull some stuff up really quick. Just some quick updates in the platform that I want to tell you about. And let me just pull these up here. All right. So we've done a little bit of work around our Magic Link. I think that was actually released already. Here we are here. Sleep routing alarm cancel. Some improvements to our LLM, to our internal AI assistant. We also had a number of changes. Some security patches just went out across the board for all of our base codes, just to tighten things up a bit. Some changes to our MCP. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I'll just show you some quick demos on that. And we've also done some improvements along a few other places where let me just see here. Sorry. Sorry, these are slightly out of order. 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. Here we are. Summary routing timeouts. Yeah, some other areas with regarding timeouts with the data API connection. It used to have an authentication time of about 3 seconds. That's been increased to 10 seconds. And the reason for that is some people have slow running scripts. And if there's something bogging down in your FileMaker system, then that could cause a timeout with authentication. We also just pushed out a patch in North America that'll go out later on today to all of our other data centers, Europe and Asia Pacific. That increases stability of version 3. You may have seen a couple seconds every now and then you'll see a service unavailable. And that was because of a recent update. This patch improves that. It also improves the timing of race condition with the application loading. So more stable loads, more reliable loads in the not only in the Klai editor, but also in the with your apps as well. Big feature is we've added authentication, OAuth authentication support for Microsoft Entra ID. So if you want to, in the past, you were able to do this using Okta or Auth0. Now you can just do this directly So it's a first sort of a first class citizen there, and you don't have to go through a third party server. It's a little easier to set up because if you've ever set up Auth0, there's always a bunch of support configurations that you'll have to go back and forth with. That's available right in the auth section, and it's also we've also added this up into our docs here as well. And there's information in our documentation on how to set that up. It's pretty straightforward. The hardest part is going to Microsoft and setting up an account. And then from there, you got a couple configs to paste into the Klai Studio. All right, I'm going to flip things over to Pearson, and he's going to tell us about some UI updates or UX updates in the industry.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, I wanted to talk just a little bit about or share some of the trends that have emerged in 2026, trends in your UI or your UX, and things that I think that or trends that I think uh, you can easily implement into your own apps or software and really kind of bring it to an elevated level, especially with the help of AI, adding these. Adding these elements a little easier. So let me just get this set up. Sorry, one sec. Just want to close any other distracting uh, things in Figma. Okay, here we go. Right. So yeah, today's UX corner, just some UX UI trends in 2026 that I think can be easily implemented into your systems. So we have advanced cursor interactions, personalized experiences, data visualization, dark mode, and micro interactions. And some of these I'm sure you've heard of or you're aware of. Dark mode, for example, pretty on the nose. We're all familiar with what that looks like. But there's some other small things like advanced cursor interactions. I think some of these trends are what I think can elevate your products. So we have advanced cursor interactions, and these are all kind of like a wide range of concepts, and a lot of different people are applying these methods or trends in different ways. So, for example, we have this website called Pest Stop Boys. I actually don't really know what they are. I think it might be like an extermination website. But what they did was, for one, their website in itself is really in your face, punchy, a lot of bright colors, and really attention grabbing. And what you have here, it's hard to really show in an image, but this whole blob and this green dot in the middle of it, that's your cursor. So as you're scrolling or moving your mouse around just this hero image, you kind of reveal something behind those colors. So you see that there's some kind of blend mode behind it. But when you move your cursor away, you don't see that cockroach head coming out of the O. And you'll also notice when you're on this website, there's like a cockroach that runs across your screen that is only seen in this surrounding area around your cursor. And so this interaction really doesn't add much to the functionality of the website. It doesn't There's no interaction that actually lets you take some kind of action with the service or sign up for anything. Is purely visual and kind of for fun. But what it does is it's kind of almost an extension of their storytelling of their brand in a way. This is a pest control service, and so by moving your mouse around, you're revealing the hidden bugs on your screen. And that's just like a visual way to represent what they do. And so again, like it doesn't add any real um, function to what you're using the website for, but it just gives it a bit of a premium feel and makes it feel a little more alive. And oops, and we did something similar with Clay. And this I kind of blurred out what the main content is in that big header because I don't think I don't think that we've put that out there yet. So I just want to keep that hidden. But what we are doing is this is on the Clay Studio website or on the app, and we wanted to promote a new feature that will be coming out at some point, and so we added these kind of little stickers or little floating elements that will move around your cursor as you move your cursor around the screen. And again, this isn't something that you're interacting with for the purpose of doing something with this element on the website, but it's a visual attractor. We wanted to make these little floaties interactive with your mouse simply just to grab your attention because this is something new. We wanted to bring people's attention to that section. So if your mouse is interacting with it, maybe animating something around it, then that'll automatically bring your eye towards it and hopefully gain some curiosity and yeah, just that attention is what we're looking for. And those are just a couple different ways of how these cursor interactions can elevate your website, give it a more premium feel, and make it feel more alive. Next is the personalized experiences. Oh, sorry, actually, one more thing about this, and this is kind of the umbrella theme of what I'm talking about, is that these are things that you can add with AI. And this is something when we added this to the Clay Studio, this is something that Charles and I we added kind of on a whim, pretty quick, uh, and we were really happy with the result in the time that we spent on it. Because otherwise, had we not used AI to add this in quickly, this is something that would have taken a lot more time than maybe it would have been worth um, if we did it manually or if we had to look up how to do these things. But by using AI to apply this or to apply these following trends, it really um, has now become a quick way to elevate your websites. So here we have personalized experiences. This is not necessarily new or a developing trend. This has been established where you have things like Netflix, or here we have on the left, we have Pinterest. And personalizing these experiences for your users is such a great way to retain that user interaction or retain your base. But now this is something that AI can help apply, where whether it's I want to personalize my not my dashboard experience for a particular role in my company, or I'm learning a bit about what this particular user wants to see, like you know, we can uh, we can surface the content that the user actually cares about rather than just showing everything at once. If we can drill down and learn more about the user and how to uh, personalize that experience for them, I think that is something that really helps the user in what they want to do. And like I said, retain your user base. And on the right, we have an example of this is a meditation app. So people are meditating for all kinds of reasons, whether it's falling asleep or to reduce stress and anxiety. If you're learning about the user and you're kind of creating this persona of them, you can present them information that is more catered to what they need rather than just something generic. Data visualization is a huge uh, piece of UX that really helps your users understand what they're looking at and see what they want to see at a glance. And this is again something that AI can help with. So on the left side here, we just have some generic graphs and number values, but they're organized in a way that this is something that this person or this company, this website is going to be used for. So if you're looking at kind of an overall, how's my company doing? This is how you see it quickly instead of having to look through your reports and your data manually. And on the right here, this is a way of visualizing some data that I made. This was with the help of AI. And was for a client uh, working with a school system and tracking, how are these students behaving in a classroom. And so I was able to create this analytics page very quickly using AI because I didn't have to figure out how to show all of this data at once. I kind of just gave AI a premise here's everything that we're tracking, and here's what I want to surface as a teacher who's using this product. This is what I want to see. And so instead of me looking through pages and pages of different graphs and different ways to represent data, I was able to use AI to just quickly uh, generate the best way, or what I determined as the best way to show this data. Uh, Dark mode, light mode, again, nothing revolutionary, but it has been more and more prevalent in the last year or so. Um, Most websites or many websites are adding a dark mode just because it's easier on the eye. It feels a little more elegant in some cases, and this is a very simple way or quick way of elevating your website using AI. Really, all it is just a simple swapping of colors. So replace the white with the dark, replace gray, like a light gray with a different shade of gray. Um, just yeah, a quick way of elevating your software. And the last one, just these small micro interactions that help communicate with the user. So on here we have like kind of an example of Instagram where when you double tap something and you're liking something, it's not just filling in the heart icon at the bottom. That might be small, might be a little less visual. But when you like something, a lot of these social medias, they have kind of like a fading enlarged icon that kind of poofs or
Mm.
appears when you're touching or interacting with something. And that's just another way to bring your software to life, make it feel like it's working and not just reacting to what you're doing. It's living, it's breathing, there's small animations on the right side here we have just on your phone. This is something that I never even really noticed or realized until it was pointed out to me, where when you're opening up your camera and you rotate your phone, um, just a few of these icons rotate with your phone, which is so not revolutionary, but just the fact that it's doing that, and you don't even notice. You're just using your phone or using the camera in your phone so naturally. Um, all of these numbers rotate. There's a couple icons up here that rotate. The photo preview of your library also rotates. Everything rotates when you change the orientation of your phone, and it's those small micro interactions that um, really help communicate to the user that there is something happening here. That could be loading screen or sorry, a loading icon that spins. It could be the pull down when you want to refresh a page on a browser, and when you pull that down, then you see that icon come down at the top of the page, maybe do a little animation. Is just bringing life to your application, and these are small things that with AI you can add that in a single prompt, or you can add all these elements to your software very, very easily and in a fraction of the time that it would have had to take to research how to do it, research how to implement it. Um, yeah, these are just some small examples of what a lot of software is doing these days.
I asked in the chat, should we add dark mode? Like, it's easier. We've held off because we got a request like 6 years ago or 5 years ago, but we held off because it was a ton of work. It's not simply just swapping colors either, right? AI does a pretty good job at it, but like certain things, you don't swap the colors. So you have to think about logos and all kinds of stuff there.
Yeah, there's some. I actually did read somewhere that said like drop shadows are not effective at all in dark mode, so you can remove
Yeah.
all your drop shadows. So yeah, there's some nuance, but uh, nuances that ideally you won't have to think about as a developer if AI is what is implementing these changes for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's Tailwind actually, they have some good guides on their channel about dark mode and about the how to go about from a coding aspect, how to think about that. But Mostly the agents can do that. Awesome. Thank you, person. Here is actually, let me just see what we got next year. Couple things. We have a new reseller program for consultants. If you're interested in that, contact Madalena. She's available on our Slack, and she can go over what the requirements are and get you set up for that. It comes with some other things as well, sales enablement, and um, will assist you on building prototypes and things like that for your clients. Clay Studio MCP. I want to show a little bit. We talked about this and we introduced this last month, and it's almost out of beta now. It's pretty solid. We've gone through about 3 updates over the course of the past 6 weeks or so. And so I want to show you some of the things that we can now do with it really quick, and then we'll get on to our feature there. Just going on to those micro interactions that Pearson was talking about. Here's where we did, and I'll tell you why we did this. You say, okay, well, why do you need these little things in here that kind of move around, right? One of the problems of the challenges we have, and I think every SaaS software does this, has this same challenge, is that people get used to using one little slice of something. And even though the product evolves, they're still using that slice. So we still find we have a ton of users that are even on old versions, and we have to almost kick them off and say, hey, you got to move forward, right? Because if they don't, they become stagnant. And then, of course, our product as a product, it seems less appealing as well because they haven't moved along with the times, and then they jump to something else possibly as well. So one of the ways we're smoothing that is adding a bit of an onboarding sequence now. So this is just a very simple thing. In fact, we did this with our MCP. There was no coding by us. We prompted. Actually, the floaties were designed with our own internal agent, but the workflow between all of the pages was all MCP. So now what we have is we have this simple onboarding workflow that encourages people. There's a link to move into the there's a link to sorry, move into the next page. And from here, if I pick an environment, I still have some prompting here because I came through that page. Otherwise, this prompt is dynamic and it won't show up. MCP took care of all of that in the app. And then we've also added a Connect AI agent, which automatically takes somebody to the appropriate tab. That little nuance of workflow would have taken somebody in our team probably a day to create, and we did it in about 15 minutes or so to put all of that in. All of the structure is there. We already have the assets and things, styling assets and whatnot, so it sort of fits in. Pearson, after we built the first thing, he went through and we just pair coded and cleaned up and made a few points bigger and smaller and things, so it looks a little tighter. But if you want to get into using MCP, it's literally that easy. Just follow that through. This will come out probably into production. This is on dev right now, but it'll come out into production probably in the next day or so. But the MCP is available already. You can just go right into there and copy that. There's a link to the docs somewhere in here. And on actually, I don't actually see the link to the docs, but we do need a link. Let me just make a quick post. This is something too. I don't know if you guys use any products like this, but Marker.io is pretty good. Marker.io is pretty good for reporting this kind of stuff, and this automatically integrates with our project management suite. And in this case, it was automatically assigned to Hassan, and then he'll go and delegate that off to for somebody to add that in. So it's pretty handy. All right, let's jump to seeing some before and afters. We asked some people for some examples, and we didn't get a ton of response. I think people, maybe the way we worded it, people felt that it was going to take a lot of burden on their behalf, and it absolutely is not. But I'll show you a couple things that we created with the MCP. And let me just jump to this first one here. I showed some of these last week. I just pointed it at the Elevate FM conference from last week, and I said, "Hey, create this app," and and it ended up mostly copying the whole thing. It was a one-shot deal here. I did not go and modify anything. I said, go have a look at all of the data and create some fake data there. And we created this sign up page for a conference. We can purchase tickets. So you can see I can purchase different tickets. Actually, it kind of looks like Ticketmaster. Um, Created an agenda and all of the sessions. It actually took some of the sessions, I think. No, these look like interested. Yeah, no, these are all fake sessions, fake data, right? But super simple to create that and some pages. So that was a quick one shot, just pointing it out at zero background research or requirements for the document for that. Let's jump to another one here, and I want to show you a before and after. Actually, this is let me do those before and after in a second here. So this is we have a company runs on the platform called Engineering Trust. We were in a call, and the developer a number of years ago built a site. This is not the site here. This is their marketing site, and they do apprenticeships in the UK. And we were on a call, and we said, "Hey, let's test this out." I was demonstrating this feature, and they wanted to build a portal for that site. So we pointed the MCP at their. Just a second here. I gotta find the actual one now. Ah, there it is. All right, we pointed the MCP at their site and we created this student portal. What I kind of like about it and is it actually decided to the LLM in this case, and this was only two prompts to do this, right? But it's the level of detail I was kind of impressed with. Is the LLM created this alternative typeface and the kerning and things like that in here. Um, there's an onboarding. Let me go back here. There's an onboarding workflow where for new students where they can walk through. Now, of course, you have to build the back end. If you are using something like Genie, which has first class support for Klai Studio now built in, you can build the entire back end. And Bruno just pushed out an update, I think the other day. I'm not sure if it's public or not. It actually will create 100% of the scripts, including all of your Klai Studio integrations. So it's almost zero effort there, and you're still keeping FileMaker as a first class database. But what's pretty cool about this one here is it's pretty thorough. There's a whole bunch of components and parts, and it gives you an idea, and this is a little bit dangerous, I think, for developers, but it gives you an idea. There's some stubbed out ends here. You can mark certain stages as complete, and you would normally add the hooks, and you can see where the hooks would run. Um, of what you can do with virtually no effort, right? This was only pointing it at the engineering trust site and saying, "Hey, recreate this." I find the LLMs do a little bit better job when they have free reign rather than when you give them too many restrictions when it comes to something where you don't have a clear vision of what you want, right? So this is, I'm not sure if the search is actually wired up as well. Yeah, right. So for the most part, there's a fair bit of this application that's actually fairly well wired up, and it takes a little bit to polish it off. And then you end up with an entire student portal. Well, I think that's pretty cool for virtually no effort. This is something that if somebody came up to us and said, "Hey, can you build something with this much functionality?" and we worked with the FileMaker developer, it would still probably be like a I don't know, $20,000 to $30,000 job by the time you're done with it, right? And now it's something that it's more or less self-serve. So I think that's pretty cool. And I'm not sure if anybody has any questions on that. I'm going to jump on to the next one here. And this next one is more of a before and after, and it is this original site was built. This site here has been up and running for quite a few years, and it was built before it was built in better forms before we had a ton of features. Um, and it's served its purpose and it's run and it's it's made the company very successful. And what the company does is they sell these gas radon and mold detection kits. So they have a few different things. I won't walk through the whole thing, but I'll give you an idea of it. And looking back, it was great, but it's a little crufty now, right? So they comes to here and it's got some artifacts going on over here. You enter some stuff in, and I guess you can check some status here and you can walk through. And what we did here is I created a second environment, a development environment. I used that development environment, which already has the all of the hooks and all of the connections, just had to add the credentials into the new environment. And we used that. And let me just find it here. We used the development environment and we pointed the MCP at that. And I used cursor, but it doesn't really matter what you're using there. And this is the old one to the new one. Now, this has not been passed by um, anybody in our UX department or anything like that. Pearson hasn't had a whack at this. This is just purely almost out of the box. And in fact, what we did is we prompted the agent to say, keep looking at the page and check it out, right? See, does it look good? Because the very first iterations were kind of ugly. And if we would have left it at that, it wouldn't have been so good. So instead, what we did is we said, look at the page and keep refining it. And then it went back and forth, and about 20 minutes later, we ended up with this. So this is actually a little nicer, I think a little nicer of a UI. It's not so blasting in your face over here. Um, they go through, and this original page was actually built as a single page, and this is where models fall down a bit. So it built this as, it didn't refactor this at all because we didn't tell it to, and it built this as a single page, which is totally fine for this use case. There's a modal here. I think there's a modal over here as well somewhere. Let me see if I can go back to it. Is this the home page? Yeah. I think there's a modal. Is it this one here? Yeah, so there's an old modal. That's just redone. I think it's one of these ones somewhere in there. And you can go through, and then from here you pick, I'll create a new registration, and then you get an idea. It presents the products, right? The products actually look a lot nicer now. I pick the product, I walk through, and then they have this little wizard on the top here that kind of pushes you across the process. So that gives you an idea, pretty much out of the box, of some of the stuff that you can do there. If you're not doing this already with your clients, go and say, "Hey, we can refresh your site." It literally takes, maybe at the end of the day, I'm saying 5 and 10 minutes of prompting, but at the end of the day, by cleaning things up and testing stuff, you're in a couple hours and you've gotten a full makeover of your existing site. Right? Zero changes on the back end for that. All right. So we're based out of Toronto, and we have a local FileMaker group here called SOFA, SOFA, Southern Ontario FileMaker Association. And I guess I don't know what year it was, but I'm thinking it's probably been about 10, about 15, I don't want to say more than 10, maybe about 10 or 15 years ago. I went to one of the meetups because I used FileMaker myself, and for another business, a few other businesses. I didn't do any consulting at the time. But I was tried to, be like everybody, FileMaker developer, try to be clever. And Doug was hosting he runs the organization, and he was hosting this meeting, and he welcomed me in, and I asked a few questions, and we struck up our conversation. And then I also met another developer, Mark, who came up and immediately asked me he goes, "Hey, what's your availability?" And it's like, well, I'm thinking, okay, that must mean something, right? So I said, well, it depends. And nonetheless, that's how I got started in consulting. And from there, obviously we've grown. And during that whole process, uh, I've always looked towards Doug as a level-headed alternate point of view, because me as an engineer, I think just want to solve problems. That's all I want to do. And I'm really driven to do that. But he's always been, every time we've had a conversation, he's always added these other points of view. So I asked him if he could join us today to talk about a talk. So I hope you enjoy it. And Doug, I really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thank you, Charles. I really appreciate everything that you've done here, and this community that you've put together is amazing. And how many years have you been doing this now?
Well,
The
it's funny.
Friday.
We judge our FileMaker-ness by what version we started. Mine was two, so three was the first one I got extra copies for, and yeah.
So in this world for a long time, and how long have you been doing these meetups?
Mm. We started at the beginning of COVID. We were one of the first ones that did a virtual meetup, and then everybody started. And now they're almost all online.
So like 6 years now,
Yeah.
maybe. Wow. Every Friday, pretty much, right?
Yeah, every once a month. Yeah.
Every 1 month.
Yeah, we've missed a few.
I mean,
Probably about 4 or 5 over the years.
yeah, amazing. Excellent. Amazing record. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I am going to talk about things in an unusual way. And the name of my talk is Getting Better. Now, I'm going to share my screen, and I have slides that are not that interesting, but probably more interesting than looking at me. So I'm gonna, oop, just 1 sec here. Okay, just 1 sec. I have to share first. All right. You with me? Um, Okay, so let me just tell you a couple of things about me. I'm based here in Toronto, Claire's Platinum partner. I've got clients around North America, a couple in Europe, and actually a couple in Asia as well. Um, and I've been working with FileMaker for about 25 years. Um, what we're going to do is talk about things in a more philosophical way. It's going to be partly philosophical, partly practical. This talk isn't designed to be motivational, but I do hope that you're motivated. If you're like me and you know you don't have everything figured out, then the goal is to help you figure out at least a few things. So, what is better? All of us here are competent developers. We're professional developers. But that competence has a dangerous side. It can calcify. We can end up with habits, patterns of doing things, rationalizations, a certain sense of certainty about what it is we're doing. And that could be a good thing because it buoys us and it gives us confidence, but it can also be a barrier to us getting better at as developers. So the question isn't whether you're good or not good. The question is whether you're still improving. Now, before I present my theory, um, I wonder if people here respond by putting up their hand? I'm looking at the list of people here. Um, anyone here who's been a developer for more than 10 years? Can we see that? Oops. Yeah. Okay. I kind of expected that. Um, Anyone who's been a developer for just maybe closer to 5 years? Ah, okay. Okay. Um, Let me just get my slide back up here. Actually, I have to start my share again. There we go.
Yeah, you're sharing your.
Sorry, folks, my
Oh,
share went away. Wait, it's back, right?
yeah, you're sharing the wrong thing though. I think this is your overview.
There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
Um, okay, I won't switch that back again. Um, uh, when you look at the environment that you're in and you consider all of the challenges that you have, I mean, you in particular, um, the the clients that you're dealing with, the people that you're dealing with. Maybe you're in-house where your clients are your coworkers, or maybe you are working for some other development shop, or maybe you have your own set of clients. No matter what, you are dealing with other people and responsible for things with other people. When you consider working in that environment, with all of those challenges and the technical world that you're living in. So you've got a database or a set of code that is been formed over a period of time and is most likely involves technical debt. It can be, when you're thinking about all of those things that you have to deal with, it's very easy to start thinking there's probably no one that could deal with this set of challenges that I'm fully immersed in any better than I'm doing it right now. It's it's hard to imagine that anyone's better than you. Well, what does better mean? Does it mean uh, being faster, smarter, more productive, having better systems, better judgment, being better under pressure? Well, I had a friend um, at a camp that I went to when I was a kid who had a great answer to this. There were a bunch of people at my summer camp who were counselors like me, and we all had guitars, and we all played guitars. And there were two guys that were by far the best guitar players, far better than everyone else. And one of the typical kid, like 18-year-old questions that these two guys would get asked all the time is, hey, who's better, you or Kevin, or you or Rob? The two guys were Kevin and Rob. And one of my friends, Kevin, had the perfect answer to that. He said, you know, we both know things the other person doesn't know. So we can't objectively decide who's better by putting some criteria down and saying these are the ways that we decide who's better, who's a better developer than I am. We need some other method of assessment. And I'm going to talk about that now. Before I start, I'm going to introduce something. I call it a tongue poll. And it is you answering a question just for you, just inside your head. And the way it works is this. I'm going to ask you a question, and then you are going to put your tongue up to the top of your mouth for a yes, and you're going to put your tongue down to the bottom of your mouth for no. Okay, so you don't use your hands, you don't click on anything. And the point of this is to be honest and truthful, and actually register an answer in your head so that you are really being introspective and not concerned about social pressure. So here we go. I'm going to ask you a question and just give you a quick try on this. So, tongue pull. Are you above average? Tongue up for yes, tongue down for no. Interesting fact here, 65% of people think that they're more intelligent than average. That means some of us have to be wrong. 88% think that their driving is better than average. Interesting. Now, I'm going to ask some more serious questions about what we do as developers. Before I ask the first question, I'm going to show you the question. Do not answer. Don't move your tongue. Am I better than I was 5 years ago? Let me frame this question for you. You might think, like, of course I'm better. You probably know more than you did 5 years ago, but are you really a better developer than you were 5 years ago? Have you created better ways of handling problems, better ways of relating to clients? Do you create better systems? Is your software delivered with fewer mistakes? Have you developed better ways of understanding and capturing your clients' processes? Are you producing software that's better in all these different respects? Okay, go ahead, answer. Up for yes, down for no. I've got a few more questions here. These we can answer right away. Am I intentionally proving? Yes, no. Oops. Do I avoid improving in areas where I'm weak? Yes or no? Am I clear about where I should be trying to improve? Yes or no? Okay. How do I know I'm getting better? What does it mean to get better? Let's try to answer that now. We're going to answer that by talking about something called priority stacks. So a priority stack is a ranked list of what matters most. At the most fundamental level, your priority stack expresses your values, the things that are most important to you. When two things conflict, because they're prioritized, the higher thing wins. A priority stack is your decision engine. And you have a personal priority stack. That's sort of our master stack. And we have substacks. And one of our substacks is our professional stack. There's a periphery, the outside, where things change easily. And there's a core in these stacks where they are more fixed and less likely to change. So things that are at our core are most fundamental values. And on top of those most fundamental values, we have other things that are important to us. And as we move further up from the core, they're more likely to change. The things at the core are more or less fixed. Without a priority stack, you don't have priorities. You just have competing intentions. If we didn't have a priority stack, we would have to rethink every problem every time it came up and come up with a new way of deciding whether we should do this or whether we should do that. Something closely aligned with our priority stack is character. And character is, as I say here, a stable priority stack under pressure. So, for instance, our priority stack helps us to make decisions. It removes the need for careful deliberation, and it allows us to act quickly. For instance, suppose your child falls through the ice. You don't need to stop and think about the implications of going to get that child. You're thinking about getting wet and that you have a meeting coming up and that you had planned to go to the mall later and this is going to ruin all of that. You're not thinking about any of that stuff. Because you have a clearly defined priority stack, it allows you to just act on the spot. This is the most important thing that's happening in my world right now, and I need to solve this problem. Similarly, if you see someone's wallet fall out of their pocket, your priority stack helps you decide in that instant what you're going to do. Are you going to pick up that wallet and hand it to them and maybe feel better about yourself, feel good about helping somebody else? Or are you going to maybe not say anything and just walk on? Because who cares about that person? Your priority stack helps you to make that split-second decision. If you find a wallet full of cash and there's a driver's license in it and nobody's around, nobody's watching, your priority stack might lead you in a little bit different direction than if you'd seen the wallet fall out of their pocket and knew that you could help that person in the instant. So fast decisions are often evidence of a set of organized values. When people are under pressure, they rarely rise to their ideals. They rarely become the person they wish they were. When they're under pressure, they fall back on their defaults, and their defaults are set up by their priority stack. So let's talk about what a developer's priority stack might be. Imagine you've got a client with an emergency. Maybe their servers crashed, or they realize that they are losing data somehow, et cetera, et cetera. A developer's priority stack might look something like this. First, do no harm. This is the overriding rule. Before being helpful, be non-destructive. Start with restraint. Second, understand the environment, know where you are, what's live, what depends on it, what state it's in, what the consequences of your actions could be. Then, of course, you want to protect the data. Once you understand the environment, you want to secure the things that matter most, which is the client's data. And of course, it's essential to preserve trust. You need to communicate honestly with the client. Don't bluff. Don't try to hide your uncertainty. Don't trade long-term credibility for short-term appearance of confidence. Just be honest. Solve the real problem. Don't just solve the symptoms of the problem. It can be easy to get in and get out and move on to the next thing, but our responsibility as developers is to find where the real problem is, find the actual failure, and solve that issue. And then finally, improve the system. After the immediate need is handled, leave things better than they were. So that's creating documentation, safeguards, logging, naming, ensuring that you're preserving or improving naming conventions, making sure things are backing up, running tests, monitoring, doing things to reduce fragility. This is just an example. Okay. So as I've said, your real priorities are revealed by your reflexes. We can say that quality matters and testing matters and that users matter. But when there are deadlines, pressure, when you're tired, when there's conflict, that's when we see what your real priorities are. That's when we see your priority stack at work. So where does our priority stack come from? Well, at first, it comes from our environment, our parents, our friends, our society, but it also comes from us. It comes from our experiences and our learning. Our priority stack isn't a universal decision engine. Often we need to evaluate against a number of factors that aren't clearly ranked. And for this, we look to ourselves and our learning. Well, let's ask a question. How do we learn? Now, I'm not going to talk about learning the way a psychologist would. I'm not talking about behaviorism or constructivism or cognitive learning theory or social learning theory or anything like that. Instead, I'm going to talk about the logic of learning. And to do that, I'm going to discuss epistemology. Epistemology is a word from philosophy, particularly now philosophy of science, but even before there was philosophy of science, the world of philosophy, epistem is Greek for knowledge. Ology on the end means study of. So epistemology is study of knowledge. And I want to introduce this by talking just for 1 minute about one of the great philosophers of science of the 20th century, really one of the great philosophers of science of the last few hundred years. His name is Karl Popper, Sir Karl Popper. And he wrote a book called The Logic of Scientific Discovery, in which he looks at the growth of knowledge not from a sociological or psychological standpoint, but instead from a logical standpoint. Just how does learning work? And Popper says this: Despite what we might think about how science progresses, we start with a problem and then we propose solutions to that problem. And those solutions are our theories, our conjectures, our guesses. Um, and instead of trying to prove that our theory is right, we should be looking at where our theories are wrong. Why? Why would it be that we shouldn't try to prove our theories are correct? Well, Popper says, and this is the critical point here, that as a matter of logic, you can't know that a theory is true. And that's because it could always, it's always possible that your theory will fail the next test it comes up against. It could have passed all of the tests that it's come up to so far, but it's always possible that in the future we'll come up with a new test that it doesn't pass. But we can know that our theory is false. So what we should be doing, rather than trying to prove our theory is true, which can lead to all kinds of problems, including trying to cover up or hide our mistakes, what we should instead be doing is trying to show that our theories are false. Try to find out where we are wrong. This is called falsifying our theory, trying to looking for ways that we could have gone off the rails. In science, if we don't criticize our theories, science progresses anyway because other people will always provide the criticism for us. But in our own lives, we have to provide the criticism or be open to the criticism that comes to us through others. You know, in the academic world, criticism is a sign of respect. It means that your ideas are worth spending time on. Nobody criticizes your ideas in the academic world if they don't think you have anything interesting to say. We need to bring some of that into our own personal world. So, how do we learn? By being critical and being open to criticism. If we think about our personal priority stack as um, a circle or maybe as a sphere, as I've said earlier, things at the core represent our most fundamental values and they're relatively fixed. They're slow to change. And out of those grow certain ideas that are fundamental in our lives. We might say, you know, capitalism is better than socialism, or socialism is better than capitalism, or we might have certain religious beliefs that are close to the core of our priority stack, our personal priority stack. Things at the periphery are much more likely to change if we go right out to the very outside. You know, you might have a belief that it's raining right now, and that belief can just change in an instant by looking out the window and saying, oh, okay, it's not raining. If nothing depending, nothing about who you are as a person depends on the things that are furthest from the core in your stack. Now, we learn by being open to criticism, but it can seem like criticism that hits us right at the core is criticism of who we are as a person. And what I'm suggesting here is that we need to adopt the position that our ideas are not the same as ourselves, that we can change our ideas without giving up on who we are as people. You know, it's easy for us to develop our solutions and be rolling along and just solving the problem that's immediately in front of us rather than developing tests to see how we've gone wrong in those solutions. And we don't like finding out that we're wrong. So often our psychology is the biggest barrier that we have to getting better. Improvement requires exposing your views to possible refutation. We love building. We don't like testing so much. we instinctively defend our ideas, but if we want to get better, we have to get over that. And so to help us do that, there's something that I call methodological ignorance. When I go and visit a client, I always try to adopt a posture of humility. It's easy, especially when you've been doing things for a long time, to assume that you know uh, things that your client or the people that you're working with don't know. And it's true. You do know things that they don't know, but they know things that you don't know. And so if you develop a position of ignorance, not because you think you're ignorant, but as a method for getting at more than you would have gotten at otherwise, for getting at more truth, for finding out new things, then you grow. So this is what I call the concept of methodological ignorance. Uh, we approach things with the assumption that we might be wrong, or that we don't understand, or that there's something we don't know. And we're always searching for weaknesses in our own understanding. So, as I've said, criticism is how knowledge grows. And this can be a problem when we're dealing with other people who are very sensitive to being critical. It's easy to be with clients or others around you that want to protect you and don't want to let you know where you're going wrong. So even if you are adopting a position of methodological ignorance and you are presenting yourself to them as someone who has a bunch of questions rather than a bunch of answers, you sometimes need to be looking for signals from them that they're hesitant, or they lack enthusiasm, or maybe they seem confused, or maybe they seem disengaged. These can be subtle signs that you're not on the right path, but they're afraid to tell you, or they're afraid to jump in. We need to become sensitive to the weak signals of others. Sometimes the absence of excitement is important feedback. So, as I've said, our priority stack helps us to decide. Well, what does decide mean? Decide, it's often not helpful to talk about the etymology of words. The etymology is their origin. It doesn't always tell us what the word means now. But in this case, I think that when we look at the word decide, the etymology helps us to see something very important. And for me, it was transformative. Latin or decide comes from the Latin decidere, which means to cut away. Every meaningful decision is also a rejection. It's deciding not just what you're going to do, but therefore what you're not going to do. We can't become excellent at everything in the world around us. So we have to decide what we're going to cut away. Let's just look at some things in our world that we're confronted with. Just as a developer, we're operating, as I say here, at the intersection of software engineering, UX, cloud architecture, security, consulting, communication, business strategy. You can read this slide. All of these different areas that we're working in. If we just look at the Claris universe, these are the things that we've got right now that we could become experts in and we can be learning about. When it comes to core development, here are all different areas of expertise requiring different skills, different knowledge, requiring our time. In the realm of development and infrastructure, we've got all of these different areas that we can spend time on and that we can become good at to varying degrees. The cloud, we've got different, you can make your own list, a better list than this. Um, then there's security, which we have to be considering all the time while we're developing. There's integration and APIs. There's just so much that is in our world as professional developers. And so, quick tongue pull. Am I good at all of these things? Tongue up for yes, tongue down for no. Now, if your tongue's suctioning the top of your mouth, I know that you're either not being honest with yourself or uh, or probably not here, because I think just about everyone who's listening to this right now has their tongue at the bottom of their mouth. There's no way that we can be good at all of these things. So, what does it require of us to decide to cut away? Well, one of the things that's helpful is developing good habits. On the slide, I say that good habits reduce cognitive load. This goes right along with our priority stack. Remember, our priority stack helps us to make certain types of decisions quickly. Discipline, or rather habits, help us to make certain kinds of decisions quickly, because our habit is a decision to act, or is the result of acting in a certain way, cutting out other possibilities and going down a particular path. Now, good habits give us something that we can improve on. But it's possible that not only do we have good habits, but we also have bad habits, and all people are a mix of both. And our habits can help us to see conflicts in our priority stack. These things are important to me, but those things are also important to me. These things conflict, and we have to try to get at a solution and resolve those things. We need to learn to act intentionally by examining our habits, thinking about whether they're aligned with our priorities, looking at our habits critically. And once we've done that, we can spend time on establishing methods and ways of doing things. Ways of doing things are ways of creating habits. I knew a developer who worked with one of my clients. I worked with them for years. They had an in-house development team, and I was there just as a consultant advising them. And their top developer, who was an absolutely brilliant guy, he would start every new project fresh. Like, I mean, totally fresh. New UI, he would try new conventions. He wouldn't be against a new type of data model. Nothing was out of bounds. So this is exciting, it's motivating, but in a way, he was always starting from zero. So that's not getting better. That's not improving. That's starting fresh each time. We have to take the risk of putting our flag in the ground, taking a position. That way, you've got something that can be criticized, something that can be improved. Otherwise, you're starting fresh over and over again. So once we have established our methods of doing things, our ways of doing things, we can make them stronger. We can make these habits stronger by incorporating them into our environment. So I say here, better is environmental, not just aspirational. Having a stable context makes certain types of behaviors more automatic. You can think about having a regular bedtime. When you have a regular bedtime, that means you have a regular wake-up time. And when you have a regular wake-up time, that means you can have a regular routine in the morning that gets you through the things that you need to get through to get to work. So, think about it. What's your morning routine? Wake up, clean up, have a coffee, have some breakfast, get to your desk, and, whatever you do cues what you're going to do next. And who hasn't had a very unproductive morning because they started with social media? You sit down to your computer, get on social media, and you're blowing 2 hours. Who hasn't had a productive morning because they started off on the right foot? All of us. Our environment is a way of sort of controlling our environment, is a way of fixing what our next move is going to be. So your environment changes the probability of your next action. Repeated actions become habits, and feedback, that is accepting criticism and um, and adopting social standards, all of that compounds into a skill. So our environment is instrumental in us developing the skill of learning and growing. Surrounding yourself with people who do what you do better than you do it. Learning accelerates socially. You can have code reviews, discussing schema with other people that you work with, talking about conventions with the people you work with, looking at scripting patterns and architecture. That's the purpose of a group like this one, just talking about these things. If you're regularly seeing code that's better than your own, you will get better. So there's this strong social uh, side, and that is part of us selecting the environment that's going to nurture us as learners and as people that are growing and getting better. Teaching exposes gaps in our thinking. So if you can get the opportunity to teach other people to lead one of these kinds of sessions, then while you're thinking through your talk, you'll find gaps in your own thinking and understanding. And that's another way of learning and growing. So I encourage everyone to get involved and to actually present at these kinds of meetings. Just going to say a couple of things really quickly about AI. Sometimes you're building something and sometimes you're trying to make yourself stronger. And I think that the two primary benefits of AI are building things and making ourselves stronger, helping us to learn. Um, so apart from this, um, AI can really be expensive to our thinking and our ability to think and our ability to improve when we become too reliant on it. I read an article a few months ago now about a guy who was spending his entire day in conversation with an AI, day in and day out, for weeks on end. He had gone on for a few weeks, and he found himself in a situation where he was on an airplane, and the woman beside him lost her AirPod. It just flipped out of her ear and got stuck in between the seats in a weird way so they could see it, but they couldn't figure out how to get at it. The very first thought that came into his head was, oh, I'm going to ask ChatGPT how to handle this problem. He's using AI not as a construction site or as a gym. He's using it as a crutch. And that's the danger that we all fall into. So, in the same way as we would never think of your best friend, your smartest friend, we would never sit at the feet of our smartest friend and just write down everything they say. We're in conversation with them. We're going back and forth with them. We're challenging them. Well, in the same way, we have to go back and forth and be challenging AI all the time and not just accepting things it's doing, not just accepting code it's writing, making sure we understand why it's writing the code that it's writing or why it's giving us the answers that it's giving us. Treat AI like you would treat a person, not the way that you would treat a god that you revere. Otherwise, we are just using AI as a crutch and not growing and not building. So let me just do a really quick jump out of all of this. I said that we start with a conscious priority stack, which is our fundamental principles. Um, I challenge every person listening to this to spend 10 minutes over the next day writing out their personal and professional priority stack. Just write down a quick list of things that you think are most important to you and try to put them in order. We learn by trying new things, making mistakes, and correcting. People who accept criticism learn faster. People who actively want to get better accept criticism and they look for criticism. They, in effect, rank getting better higher on their priority stack. Part of getting better is deciding, using our priority stack to help us cut things away, what we're helping us to determine what we are going to do and what we're not going to do. All of this helps us to develop discipline. We develop habits that put us in a position to improve, and our environment is really, in many ways, a way of controlling us getting better. Getting better, as I've said, is environmental. It's not just aspirational. Develop a routine that's designed to help you improve and put you in an environment where that positively changes the probability of your next action. And hopefully all of this will help us as developers to find a new elevated normal, and that we won't be complacent in that, but continue to go to the next level and the level after that. Anyway, thank you. I don't know whether people have questions or how you do things, Charles.
They usually just don't say boo most of the time, man. So jump in there if you guys got questions. So, but yeah, we do
Questions,
encourage
comments,
we.
criticisms.
Well, I actually have notes myself, but that's me. So just going back to like the idea validation. There's a book I read called The Mom Test, and
Okay.
basically the gist is that you're trying to validate an idea, and you don't want to look at like what am I missing factor. You're looking at we don't tend to not do that, and we tend to become blind, and that worries me because I get, a bit myopic sometimes. Um, and the idea of the mom test is that if you go and take something to mom, she's gonna say, "Oh, great, honey, that looks awesome. Really good job. Now come eat your meat." That kind of mentality. Um, how I don't know. Are there good ways to get people to open up to your ideas and not roll
Well,
their eyes by?
it's very interesting because, in the world of science, the goal ultimately, I think, should be truth, getting at the truth, determining the truth, understanding the way the world works. But because we're human, our own psychology gets in the way of that again and again. And the reason that science progresses anyway is, as I said earlier, if we aren't willing to be critical of our own theories, that's okay, because in the world of science, there's a community that provides the criticism for us. It's very different than the community that we're in here, where, you know, it's an it's more or less a nurturing environment where we try to encourage each other, and we aren't looking at we're just trying to make people feel good about themselves. Maybe they're kind of like mom, trying to make people feel good about themselves and what they're doing and how they're doing it and all of that. And there can be a way in which that's okay, because I think that when we're quiet and just with our own thoughts, we are often deeply critical of ourselves. We are painfully aware of our shortcomings. And so maybe we don't really need people pointing those out to us. But I think that if we take those thoughts about our shortcomings and not look at them as deficiencies, but look at them as opportunities, then we can start asking, all right, what are my next steps? Where do I go from here? Given the fact that I don't know too much about this, what's my next step?
Can I chime in?
Sure.
Yeah. So, hi everybody. My name's Jose. So we're in the education business, which is really the behavior changing business.
Hmm.
Um, so we adopt the integrated human formation model, which starts with self-knowledge and then goes to self-discipline. So I really was enjoying everything you were sharing, Doug, because it's all stuff we teach. Um, and taking the depth of an idea, which is hard, which is why it's hard for all of us sometimes to hear criticism because we're kind of you know embodying or espousing certain ideas. But yeah, I think it's really important to we start with temperaments, teaching people temperaments, which is like this is Greek stuff, the four classic temperaments, because there are people that are not going to tell you the truth because they value peace more than conflict, and obviously like the truth is can lead to conflict. So it's really important to kind of know your temperament and then the temperaments around you so that you get people in your life that can pretty much like tell you what the truth is. Otherwise, and then for those that are more likely to do that, learning how to do it in a way that is more um, graceful, I guess would be the right word. Not so blunt, not so like kind of in your face. Because you can be right, so right that you're kind of wrong. So, anyways, yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
In the corporate world, there's something that is, I think, very valuable, a 360 review, where you get the people that you work with reviewing your work. And from that, you learn about how you're being perceived by other people. And it can help you to get clear on what some of your own shortcomings are. Mostly those are shortcomings as a manager or a as there's social things that come out rather than maybe technical things having to do with your day-to-day work that maybe other people don't really ever get to see uh, or don't aren't really privy to. But I think there's real value in that kind of thing. And so what we need to do, I think, or what we can do, is try to be sensitive to the signals that we're getting from the people that are around us. Um,
Yeah,
because
yeah. I especially enjoy when you were saying how some people are very subtle, you know, in their like not approving what you're saying. Um, and depending on your temperament, like I need an explicit no, because if I'm sharing an idea, like say my son, he's like a pragmatic. If I'm sharing an idea and he's not saying no, then I'm thinking that he's giving me an implicit yes. And
right.
and in his mind, he thinks I never gave an implicit yes. Why are you thinking we're going to do that? Does that make sense? And so it's just like a miscommunication. It also reminds me of I can't remember who puts out I don't think it's the Myers-Briggs, but it's the balconies and basements. Have you seen that one too? It's like the 360 where your strengths kind of also become your weaknesses. They become like a blind spot for you.
Big time.
Yeah, but that's really important that when you understand how other people's temperaments are, you really start to be able to pick up those subtleties, because I was always thinking like he was in agreement with something and he's not, and then I'm
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a good point. It's something that's very common. And
yeah,
what you just made me think of is all of this can be related to the innovator's dilemma in one way or another. In the business world, if you are have a successful product, then it that product can prevent you from continuing to innovate and grow, and because you focus on that product, all your income comes from that product and from developing that product and from marketing that product and from continuing to build that product. And as a result, you aren't paying attention to a whole bunch of other things that can allow competitors to come up and solve problems that you aren't solving or solve problems in a new way that you aren't solving them. And so, one of the points of this is that there's no rest. There's no rest if you have a successful product, there's no rest, and you have to be willing to cannibalize your own product the way that
Mm.
Apple did with the iPod and the iPhone. The i the iPhone did everything the iPod did and better, and they allowed the iPod business, which was a way bigger part of their business at the time, to go away in because they saw that this new thing was better and was coming. They were willing to give up on that old thing. We have to be willing to give up on our old things and never rest. Otherwise, it's time to retire.
So along
Yeah.
along that, um, when I first pitched the idea of Better Forms, 8 years ago or so, yeah, about 7, 8 years ago, maybe even more now, I got a bit of pushback. So why are you building all of this when you could just be building this one thing, right? And took that with a grain of salt. That was actually from you, Doug. And it was good feedback. Because it made me have to refine the way I'm selling it, the way I'm explaining it. But how do you, if you have an idea and I don't want to say can't necessarily convey it, like we have a new product that we're working on, and I'm constantly trying to refine how to even do the elevator pitch for it to explain what it does without taking a half an hour and finally getting the whole thing across. So if I purely look at the initial feedback, I don't think I've given it a fair trial. How do I balance that? Like, how do you, do I just keep look and figure out better ways of explaining what I'm doing? Or is it maybe there's a fundamental problem with the product that if I can't explain it eloquently, maybe there's a problem there.
We struggle with the same thing,
Mm.
Charles. When we started, you know, we thought that the product was the software. We thought the product was the software, and it's like a new class. It's like it doesn't exist really
Mm.
in schools. It's like an ERP, kind of system, right? Uh, but I think my son said this to me. I'm not sure where he got this, but he said there's really typically, I mean, there's really only three types of business. You're either in the improve your finances business, improve your health business, or you improve your relationships business, right? Um, and
Mm.
we realize we're in the relationship business. We're in the business of strengthening the relationship between the parents, the students, and the school staff, so that we can kind of align everybody's efforts to move the needle, socially, academically, emotionally, to the benefit of the kids. And we do that by surfacing pertinent, valuable information in a timely manner with here's the problem, here's like a possible solution, right? And so because parents are not really engaged with schools if everything's fine. Like I have better things to do than to go to a parent meeting. Does that make sense? So we need to surface what the problems are before they'll be engaged. Um, so so now it's like no, we're in it. An engagement platform. We're a relationship and an engagement platform. Um, and all this other stuff we do, the parent trainings, we do classroom management trainings. It's all for the benefit of improving the relationship, between the children and the parents, right? Because there's a lot of friction there right now, especially with the whole, social media and smartphones and all that stuff. I'm sure you guys are aware. And then also improving the relationship between the teachers and the students, because there's a lot of friction again because of that. And just typically, learning is hard. Learning is facing your fears. Learning is facing your incompetence and thinking you might not overcome it. And so how do we strengthen those relationships and make it as easy as possible?
Doug, I think you're still sharing there.
Oh.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's funny. That's okay. There's three. Yeah, I've heard that before. Like there's three kinds of problems, right? Every problem falls into relationship, finance, and health. Same sort of take.
And I think you're in the relationship business. You're helping us, you know,
Mm.
make things better, faster, easier. Um, I like what you said one of the meetings. I can't remember which meeting you said, but you said we become more like directors or orchestra conductors rather than like I'm gonna go play these two notes, and I gotta be really good at playing those notes. I don't know that you said the notes part, but you said
Hmm.
something like that. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I speak a lot of stuff out of my tail, so.
Well, that one was good. So.
How do you learn, Doug, to love testing? Like, I like the feedback, but it's the feedback doesn't give me the endorphin hit. Solving the problem does. The feedback is like one step away. It's the once removed. And then if I
You know,
get that feedback, it's like, okay, I can solve that person's feedback. I can like let me get my wheel spinning again.
there's another endorphin hit that is not as strong a hit, but and you kind of have to cultivate this in yourself, but it is in knowing that you have done the job thoroughly, that you've like looked at every way in which that you can come up with in which things could be wrong or a mistake could have been made, and not stop until and in just a practical sense, and it comes up all the time, and I used to wonder about this. I have certain people that I work with that are and that have higher number of mistakes in their work than others, and it has nothing to do with how smart they are, how good they are as a developer in general, but it does have something to do with their concern for doing the job really well and for completely solving the problem. Part of the problem is returning something to the client that is going to work the way they expect it to work. And getting people to understand that and to care about that is can be difficult. Shame, though, helps. If I never get mad at someone when there are mistakes in their work because I think mistakes are part of the business. But if the same person is getting, hey, the client just found this, hey, the client just found that, hey, what's going on with this, over and over again, they start to get like, oh, I don't like the I don't like the subtle pain of being wrong over and over and over again, or of making these mistakes over and over and over again. And so they correct. But you have to then make sure you take the time to go over the problems with the people that you're working with so that they're aware of them. Like I often see little problems that I could just quickly fix, and I have to stop myself from doing that and bring it back to the person who did the work so that they know that there are those little problems. And not because they need to learn how to fix the problem, but because they need to learn how to look for the problems and test thoroughly before they turn things out. So I don't know. I don't
Hmm.
I don't think that that necessarily makes things highly motivating, but I think it can be somewhat motivating to just know that you're turning out stuff that is done really well.
Yeah, that one doesn't resonate as much with me personally. I think it's maybe because I don't know, maybe I'm not check all the boxes and complete finish type driven. You mentioned something we were walking in Montreal at the CQDF a few months ago, and I was telling you about their new product, and then you asked a few questions, and that changed my perception of the archetype that we're trying to market to. And it's since changed a little bit more, refined a little bit more as well. So I know there's room, there's got to be, like, I don't have such great hubris that I think there's no room for expansion. I know it's not right. And the whole concept, I think you said, what's, where am I wrong? Or I don't know, one of your slides, something to that effect. I think that's the one that, for me personally, that I need to ride on is that's why you're on here. It's just a therapy session for me, by the way. It's everybody else is hanging out. So.
We know one other interesting. There's a book out there that I really enjoyed reading. It's called the Checklist Manifesto,
Mm, yeah.
and I found it really interesting because sort of outlines a way of institutionalizing your process to try to avoid certain types of common problems. And in the development world, that can mean creating checklists for different types of scenarios. If you have a, if you have to go in and solve a problem regarding a server, then you might have a checklist for the things you're going to do, the order of operations that you're going to use in order to prepare the environment and then diagnose the problem and then restore things and then bring everything back online. There are certain steps that you should take all the way along. And if you write those down and turn them into a checklist, then you're a lot less likely to make mistakes. Similarly, when it comes to testing, um, first of all, now you can use AI to test your code, and that can be very useful, but it doesn't mean that it's going to find peculiar ways that people might use your product that you hadn't thought of before, or um, that it's going to necessarily, there are all kinds of ways in which people do things that just aren't obvious and wouldn't have been obvious from the outset. But if you develop certain testing protocols and sort of check through them and get in the habit of doing them every time, then you're a lot less likely to introduce mistakes into the production environment.
I
Doug, I
think
really like that book. Um, and the counterpoint to that, have you heard of the Anti-Fragile book?
the
The
anti
what,
what?
sorry?
It's called Anti-Fragile.
Ah,
Anti-fragile.
Yeah. So this guy talks about how error is going to always be part of the system, and so what it's either going to be individual people making mistakes, or you can make it a system wide error. Um, and so he uses as an example some of the problems that they've been having with the jet that kept crashing itself because it was getting there's like too many safety checks to make it like perfect, right? To try to eliminate all human error, but then the
Mhm.
system itself is creating errors. It's a really good book. I like the one you said. I think it's very practical. I'm not saying that checklists aren't good, but I think at some point, you have to recognize that we're humans and there's going to be a mistake. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting because we do that in code a lot, right? Well, the FileMaker community doesn't do it as much in code, but in some systems are really resilient to fault tolerance, right? We have retry queues, like our new product, for example. It's there's heavy process queues and things like that, and there's it's very very highly fault tolerant, way more than any other system that we've built before, just because that's easy to do. Um, and I think that's interesting. I have to check that book out.
Hmm.
I have another question for you, Doug, but I can't read my writing, so oh well.
I just wanted to point out that it is mathematically possible for more than 60% of people to have above average intelligence,
Mm. Oh,
isn't it?
is that what average
Yeah,
or mean?
absolutely right.
But
Good
I did
point.
a quick search, and actually, I think polls
Very good
say
point.
it's more like 65 to 85% of people believe that, which is probably a little more far-fetched.
Right.
But that would make sense, though,
That's a good
right?
point. That's a good one.
Like if you didn't know, you would still think you wouldn't know because you wouldn't know. So
That goes along with the fact that about 80% of parents think their kids are
oh yeah.
performing at grade level in English and math, and it's really the national average is more like in the mid 30s. Um, and some of the schools we work in, it's in the low 20s. So it's like that disconnect. It's a delusion. Um, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's easy for us to be biased towards ourselves. It's almost default.
Alessandro, you had a question?
No, I want to speak about intelligence because I think that we are speaking to we are all problem solver, correct? A lot we are about developer, but maybe sometimes to be smart or intelligent is not related to make more money. So every developer need to pay the bill. Sometimes we spend so many time to have our perfect word, how we like, how to solve the problem in the better way. But I think that sometimes our invoice to the customer not increase the value. So, an example, my wife say to me, "Why you want to continue to focus to be happy what you do? Make the 50%, spend the 50% less of the time that the client don't understand the 50% more that you did." You understand? So the intelligent, what is more intelligent. Sometimes be restricted and not be super enthusiastic what we deliver, and so we have more time to make multiple projects. Or I'm so happy to show something that we are proud, and the client say, "Okay, you are proud, I like it," but he don't understand exactly why we are proud for something that we deliver. So the borderline about to be smart and intelligent, speaking about developing, is different. Sometimes there are people that is not smart, but they can take a decision so quickly that they invest the time in a better way. Okay. So an example with AI now, I spend a lot of time to experiment. I make a lot of good software, but sometimes the client say to me, "Alessandro, you explained to me last week, now you change everything. It's better, but give me the time to understand what you did last week. Don't change this week because my team is not so quick like you." So sometimes we need to understand the step that we can do and the step that we cannot do. This is about the intelligence. It's not also to solve the problem in a very quick way. It's to how pass this information to the customer. Because if the customer don't understand, we don't have the result that we want. We are happy, but the client is not happy.
Alessandro, I think that what you're talking about is the digestible rate of change that I think creates anxiety actually for people. You can make something way better, but if you're changing things so fast that they
Yeah.
really can't assimilate it, it's just overwhelming. It's something that they can't. So you have to try to like sometimes go slow to go fast. We say that a lot with training. There's a lot of cognitive shifts, and I think that one thing that probably characterizes most of the people that are in this meeting is we like the fast rate of change. Like it's all dopamine hits for us. It's like boom, this. It's like, we're cortisol dopamine junkies. Like cortisol is what's making you like, I gotta solve this. I know how to solve this. You were just speaking to that, Alessandro. Like, okay, I'm gonna go that 50% because I know I could do it and it needs to be done. Boom, you got a dopamine hit. You're not doing that really for the money. You're doing it for your brain chemistry. In my opinion, I don't know, Greg, Doug, you can say more to that.
Sort of falls into line with something that
I
Mark
think that's
Anderson
right.
said to me the other day. We were out and he was talking about, I think it was a sports athlete quote, but it applies to everybody. It's like, um, I play the game for free. You just pay me to show up on time, right? Like somebody asked me, what am I doing this weekend? It's like, I'm gonna sit in front of my computer pretty much dawn till dusk because I love doing some of that stuff. And, 9 to 5, my other time is the stuff that we have to do. And I think, Alessandro, that's, when you're saying it's not about the intelligence, we're not getting paid for all of that intelligence. That's stuff that we love to do as well. Like I've always looked at work as an exchange, right? I exchange some of my life, my only commodity I have left, with a bit of money, right? And if my hobby, what do you do in your off time? You're 5 to 9. You take that money and you spend it on the rest of life, what we call living. But if that hobby happens to be the same thing, that's where I think a lot of us sit.
Yeah,